Hey, my name is Bill Ferriter, and it's time for another 10-minute team tip. Those of you that know me know that I have a daughter named Reese, and she's my entire world. I love everything about that kid. She's quirky, she's funny, she's talented, she's artistic, she's thoughtful, she's intelligent, she's passionate about things. She's the best. However, she's not the best at always finishing her homework. And in 7th grade, something really interesting happened. On her interim report, Reese had 23 zeros across all of her classes. Now, that blew my mind as a parent because she's a capable student. She can do the work. She just was choosing not to do the work. And so I pulled her aside and I said, hey, kid, what's going on here, right? Like, how in the world do you have all these zeros? Wouldn't it just be easier for you to do the work rather than have to argue with Dad about doing the work later? And she said something that I thought was worth reflecting on. Her argument in return was, Dad, most of that work, it just doesn't matter. It has no value to me. It's not going to help me in any way that I need it to help me. And then she said the words that you see highlighted in blue. She said, it's the teacher's job to give me a reason to care about their assignments. You want me to do it? Prove to me that I should care about it. I want you to reflect on that for a quick second. How does Reese's argument make you feel as a teacher? Is it the teacher's responsibility to convince a student that the work they're doing matters? Should a teacher be held responsible for building relevance before asking students to complete a task? And if a teacher doesn't build relevance before asking students to complete a task, can a teacher really be surprised when the students just don't do it? You can see your rating scale on the screen. If you want to, go ahead and pause the video and just think about that for a minute. Is it the teacher's responsibility to build relevance if they're expecting students to complete work? Go ahead and think about that for a sec. Now, I want to start out by telling you that I shared Reese's thoughts. I literally took a screen grab of this particular graphic and I shared it out in Twitter. If you want to find that, you're welcome to. It was a pretty interesting conversation. What made it so interesting is that I got buried in negative comments. Teachers were 100% opposed to Reese's argument. They thought Reese was disrespectful. They thought it was my job. You're the parent. You help your kid understand why things matter. They said things like, it's never the teacher's responsibility to give a kid a reason to care. It's the kid's job to come to school and actually care. You've heard those sorts of arguments before, right? And then things got dark because I noticed in a lot of the conversations, a lot of the posts that people made, teachers were using really negative language to describe students. People were saying things like, well, you can lead a horse to water. And my reaction was, are you calling my kid a horse? Right? And then one of the more ugly comments that I got was this one. And notice I've blurred out the identity of the person who made it, but I just want you to wrestle with this, see it for a second. This teacher went as far as to say, we can't let the inmates run the asylum. That language is something I want you to think about today. In this moment, I want you to think about the language that we use to describe students in our school, particularly students who struggle in your classroom, or students who you perceive as the kids who don't care. If you're perceiving students as kids who don't care and you're using language like, well, we can lead a horse to water or we can't let the inmates run the asylum, I would argue you've got a cultural problem in your building. It's impossible for us to create learning spaces that are empathetic and understanding if our attitude towards our learners is, well, you can't lead a horse to water, or you can't let the inmates run the asylum. Negative language is an indicator of our beliefs. So does that kind of language happen in your school? If so, I would argue you're never going to create a space where struggling students succeed or engage in your learning. Because why would I engage in a learning space where you see me as an inmate that's going to rub off on your actions towards me in the room? By the way, a fun little twist of this whole conversation is something you might disagree with. I don't think there's ever a kid who just doesn't care. I think those students who present as I don't care about learning, really I think what you're seeing is either I don't believe that I can succeed or I don't think this has any importance for me. And what's wild about that is we can address both of those things. I can remember early in my career seeing those students who just didn't do any work like my child and thinking in my mind, well, geez, if that kid would just care, maybe he'd be successful. Or if those parents would just pay attention, maybe they'd be successful. Later in my career, I started to realize that if a kid isn't working hard in my room or isn't contributing in my room the way that I would like them to, maybe it's because either they don't believe they can succeed or they don't think succeeding makes any real difference anyways. It's worth wrestling with, isn't it? By the way, when it comes to Reese's argument that it's a teacher's job to give students a reason to care, whatever you felt about that, whatever rating you gave to it, Reese is right. Go look at the research around motivation and efficacy. This is Joan Dabrowski and Tanji Marshall. You can see the name of the research report in the slide. I'll link it in the session description down below. They argue that if a student believes that an assignment is useful for their lives, they're more likely to engage. Build relevance, and you'll see learners start to care a little bit more. That's not a surprise, is it? Every learner, including adults, needs to understand why something is important before they'll fully invest. You do, don't you? Have you ever sat in a professional development session and been completely disengaged, like sat in the back, like pretending to listen, but in reality you were grading papers? Why'd you check out of that professional development session? Right, probably because you didn't think it was useful for your work. When you as an adult sit in a space and don't have relevance, you don't engage either. So let's not be surprised when our kids don't engage if they don't think something is useful for their lives. We need to build relevance if motivation and efficacy is something that we really care about. When somebody believes something is valuable, they're more likely to lean in. And what I think is nuts is that Dabrowski and Marshall, they looked at 6,000 middle school assignments, and very few made any deliberate attempts to build relevance for students. What do I mean when I say very few? Literally 12% of language arts, social studies, and science assignments made any attempt to build relevance in the lesson for students, and only 2% of math assignments did. Those numbers blow my mind. And they blow my mind because I believe that every teacher can tell a student why a lesson matters. I bet you can. When a kid raises their hand and says, "Why are we doing this?" I bet you have an answer. But what research shows is that we don't build relevance intentionally. We're not doing it deliberately. We haven't taken any direct action to tell everyone at the beginning of the lesson, here's why this matters and here's why you should care. Instead, we wait for someone to ask. My team tip for you today is don't wait for kids to ask. Find ways to deliberately build relevance conversations into every lesson, even 2 minutes at the beginning of the lesson where you say, here's what we're learning, guys, and here's why it matters to you beyond school. That simple act of pointing out to students that this isn't just something that you're doing in school to chase some points or improve your average or to get ready for the end of grade test, but instead, this is a skill that you will use beyond school, or this is knowledge that can help you function in school or in life beyond school. Just that simple act of pointing out why something is important is oftentimes enough to build engagement in your learners. For my own daughter, she would tell you, if you can explain to her how it's going to matter to her or help her, she's more willing to do your work. So wrestle with that with your peers, would you? Are you taking intentional steps to build relevance in your lessons, or do you do that only when you're asked by students? Are you answering the why question? Why does this matter to me? Frequently in your rooms, or do you wait to give an answer when asked? Simple change you can make is don't wait. Build relevance from the get-go. It's not just about helping students to understand what they're expected to learn. It's about helping students to understand what they're expected to learn and why that learning is important. That's how you build engagement. All right, hope this was worth your time. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of 10-Minute Team Tips. Thanks for coming.